Enterprises are adopting the latest technology advances as they look to manage the expectations of today's highly demanding and connected consumers, making it imperative to explore new business models and offerings that must be embraced if industry leaders are to achieve new benchmarks of excellence.
I think today's conversation is very clear, is about unlocking the potential of open source technologies as a catalyst to build the trillion-dollar digital economy. And I wanted to be very specific here. We are not talking about the GDP-related economy. We are talking about building the digital trillion-dollar economy. But before we get into that, it's important I state a few facts. The first fact which I wanted to highlight to you is that by 2025, India is going to be powered by 800 million to $1 trillion of an economy, which is actually equivalent to 18 to 23% of the GDP at that moment of time. The second thing is India is among the top 2 largest countries in their contribution to digital adoption. And the third most important factor is 34% of the millennials, 34% of the population is contributed from the skilled millennials. I think with the above context, I would first move on to the discussions with Dr. Phatak. Dr. Phatak, you've been one of the few visionaries, if I may say so with your permission, of open source as a catalyst to transformation. What would your views be about open source as an enabler to the digital economy?
I don't think I'm a visionary, but I've been a follower. I would like to mention 2 important things, because I have also worked with many user organizations, particularly in financial sector. See, a user organization is interested primarily in solving the business problem. They are not interested in this technology or that technology. They have no preference to either a commercial product or open source product. So what I have seen is that only those open source products and technologies are adopted when, number one, these have large thriving communities across the world which are contributing to perpetual enhancement. And second, when commercial support services at affordable prices are available. But increasingly, I see extremely good products coming with some few innovators to begin with, but large communities are evolving and good support services are now being available. So I think there is a good chance that the adoption of open source will continue unabated and will enhance over the coming years further. In fact, Government of India has an award policy
Absolutely.
of preferring open source wherever they go.
Yes. Thank you, Doctor. I think I will switch gears a little bit. A key in thriving the digital economy, and I'm sure you all are aware of, is about new concepts, because that's very important. New concepts will require new capabilities. I'm sure you all agree. And for building those new capabilities, you need a new culture. Now, that's the most difficult part of any organization we have sent. Whether you are, one of the leading communication service providers, and I'm sure with subscriber base, if I'm correct, 336 million subscribers, if I got it right. What is your view, in building this digital economy?
As you mentioned, right, 300 million plus customers, and all of us hear about IoT, AR, VR, interactive gaming, and a plethora of use cases, unprecedented growth taking off. All of us hear about 10x, 100x growth in sensors, whether it be a smart city, whether it be a smart flow, or a smart health, or a smart car. We would have a huge amount of solutions that a customer is willing to consume today. So the amount of concepts, the amount of facilities and services that we can take to customer is what is limited by our mental capacity. And that is what we need to unleash. That is point number 1. What kind of capabilities it needs for a telco like me, for a communication services providers like us, what we think catalog. We look at a specified catalog. Now we need to look at customer, and we need to create the future catalog and the future use cases. We need to create newer and newer use cases at consumption price points which the customer would be willing to consume. and still maintaining. And what do we have? We have 300 million customers. All said and done, we are able to service 300 million customers across the length and breadth of the country at a carrier grade assurance level, at a cost and a price point that you know and can understand. Now, if we can do that, and if we can take that capability and serve these use cases, then there is where the value is, and the capabilities it requires is coming out from the standard set of catalog that we have and reimagining the use cases that we need to provide in the future. The demand before us is infinite, if I can say so, and therefore it is not the competition, it is the agility and the co-creation, and that's the change in the culture that one could imagine.
Absolutely. And, I'll just move back to Amol. Amol, you've been, at the helm of the largest bank, and I may reinstate that, the largest bank in India.
Yes.
I think you have a customer base of 430 million accounts, if I'm correct in my computation?
No, customer base.
Account base.
Account base?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, with this kind of scale, what is your thought on the 3 Cs from a State Bank of India perspective, and how that is going to be, fueling the digital economy?
Sure. So I'll add an interesting tidbit to the point that you mentioned. If I just go by the customer base of State Bank of India, it makes me the 3rd biggest country in the world. I have China, India, State Bank of India, then I've got America. So that's the sheer size of State Bank of India. And that's where I would answer the question the other way around.
Okay.
So for us, culture comes first. So our culture is being customer-centric. So serving such a large base of customers is what we definitely look at, correct? And if you look at the way technology implementations have happened across all the banks in the last 2 decades, it's now a given that any bank that you go to will have a core banking, will have a payment gateway, will have a ATM switch, so on and so forth. So we are constantly looking at ways and means to give value to the customer. So that's the concept that we are looking at. We are looking at ways and means to give value. We are looking at ways and means to give ease of onboarding for a new customer. This is the concept that we are looking at. And obviously the capability required for that, if open source can provide us that particular technology, we are more than happy to onboard it. Bottom line, culture, we are customer centric. Concept, we want to ensure that there is little or no friction in the way the person interacts with the bank, and we want to give more value to it. And if open source can do that, we'll definitely take it on board.
Excellent. So what I can hear is, new consumptions, new use cases are driving, new patterns of concepts, of culture, of capabilities. I will move to Arun. Arun, you've been, from optics of the worldwide perspective, you've seen not only the financial services industry, the communication services, but beyond that, you've seen, the rest of the industries, and from a global perspective. It would be interesting if you could highlight what your thoughts are, and specifically, out of the 3 Cs, if you could highlight something on the culture perspective.
It's a great question. There was a time when the right strategy was the most important thing, the right set of capabilities was the most important thing, and of course you needed to have the right set of cultural dimensions to it. And as the world has evolved, it's becoming clear that it's culture that really rocks. And if you have the right set of values, the right intrinsic values, and the cultural dimensions, more importantly, the why you do what you do versus the what you do, and you have a clarity on the why, everything else follows so well. So as I go around the world, including here in India, it's becoming very clear that it's a cultural dimension that shapes what a company does in a sustainable way. Strategy evolves, capabilities evolve, but culture is the primary constant.
Thanks, Arun.
The biggest plus point of open source community is the community in itself, right? For open source software, the biggest support, the backbone is the community. The community which keeps on contributing, the community which keeps on finding issues or the flaws in the earlier versions of the software. And hence the entire evolution of the software is much faster as compared to, say, a proprietary or a closed loop software. This itself is the biggest enabler that we have. So when there is complexity in place, trust me, there is a big community in the background which is trying to make the software as simple as possible.
What's digital economy about? It's about, using technology on all aspects of the business, okay, to solve a business problem. Could be to fuel the growth, it could be to take out cost, it could be in terms of how you serve your customers better, it is about how you get suppliers integrated, it could be improving citizen service. So there are many connotations, okay? And today technology is helping to solve business problem. And they are not just in one aspect of the business, they are in all aspect of business. So that's what, you know, is an opportunity ahead of us in terms of digital economy.
Just moving on, I thought we will swing a little bit on the, the next phase of questions. Growth in economy is fueled by disruption and innovation, and we all know about that. And every organization, and let me be very clear, I have seen it personally, every organization today is striving to stay ahead or lead the way. So, Arun, coming back to you again, Red Hat has been probably the earliest adopters and disruptors of technology. And this has been consistent innovation. And if I may say so, what is the secret sauce of growth, and which is consistent growth in the last 26 years?
So I think when you look at Red Hat, and it's a good example of how Red Hat's strategy is defined by its culture. We are an open source company. We have no IP. Everything we do, even programs and projects that we lead upstream, we open source it. And the best way to find out whether the technology is good, is useful for mankind, is to have lots of people contributing to it, thousands of people and companies contributing to it. So I would say humbly that our growth has been not just a factor of how cool Red Hat is, and it's a very cool company, and very fine people and capabilities and strategy and concept. It has been defined by this meritocracy of ideas that comes from the power of many. And innovation, disruption is all about many people coming together and a user-defined contribution to technology by the users, for the users. And of course, our role at Red Hat is to take this rapidly evolving technology, harden it, certify it across thousands of hardware and software platforms, and make it enterprise ready. So this idea of growth is self-perpetuating when you have so many people contributing and collaborating to build good technology.
Absolutely. So I think, Dr. Phatak, it would be interesting to hear from you, your thoughts on innovation and disruption related to open source.
Few things clearly stand out. Take financial services, for example.
Yes.
I mean, the emergence of Aadhaar, and more particularly emergence of UPI as an open set of things, has fueled more disruption in India than many other things. I mean, I recall the days going back when NIST in United States was the main repository of a lot of open source things. But to take that and build upon it, a large mechanism, a large framework, what is happening without many people realizing it, built around UPI, there is a set of open APIs which are being released called India Stack. And that will fuel further disruption because it is not limiting itself to only financial services, but you can use those to build educational services, healthcare services, delivery of government services. And I believe over the next 3 to 5 years, this open set of APIs will grow further. And I am a believer that India Stack will actually become the most agile component needed desperately today, where we are not seeking any more of developing monolithic applications, but we are seeking applications which can easily interface with other applications, including those unknown today. And I believe, I mean, the word agile is used in terms of software development, but I think the companies, user companies have to become very agile, and they cannot become agile unless they adopt such an open set of APIs and start building systems around. And all of this is not only being fueled by open source, but I think there are many more open source components and products and technologies yet to arrive. in the next 10 years, which will see a greater disruption and greater innovation.
Thanks, Doctor. I have something on technology, and this is going to be important, Mudit. Once again, you've been whatever I've seen through and heard about, one of the leaders, not only in India, and I can, if I may say so, globally, on building your unified horizontal cloud strategy. And this definitely is going to be, beneficial not only for your current networks, but as you move forward into the next wave of 5G telecom. So it's very important to understand, what's your view and what's your take, Mudit, and how this is going to be again impacting the digital economy.
Let me reflect back a couple of years back, two to 3 years back, when we started seeing an unprecedented growth in data consumption, right? And we all know, right? Today, all of us, we can't imagine life without smartphones, without applications, without videos, and everything has moved from video to high definition, to 4K, to 8K, to news being consumed as videos, and videos driving data consumption in an unprecedented manner. And today we have more than 100 locations on cloud in the country, and we are given to understand it's possibly the largest deployment in the world. Of course, when we started, it was quite inefficient because mature systems were quite efficient. They were targeted to deliver that particular service. But then what it meant was every service has a different box, and putting together the cost never made out. And having done the journey that we had, of course, it called for large number of innovations. SRIOV, for example, being one of the things that we and the whole NFV architecture which came about, right? And now today we see billions of sessions, millions of customers working quite fine. In the performance is completely carrier grade. Today, as we look at future, now again we should be looking at 1,000 clouds in the country, and we should be serving interactive gaming, video surveillance, video analytics, high bandwidth consumption, distributed use cases from these locations. So innovation, in technology, innovation is relevant innovation is the key. And it is not only a solo innovation, it is innovation in lockstep with the ecosystem partners. And if done properly, it does create value, is one thing that we have learned over the course of the walk.
Amal, just moving on to you, we've heard from the communication service providers' perspective. What's your view on, open source and open architecture, primarily in the banking industry? And, from your State Bank of India perspective, you could highlight a few thoughts.
Sure. So, running a bank means we are in the business of trust. Okay. So, we value the data that the customer has with us. So, whatever solutions we design, they are essentially customer centric. So, they have to serve a purpose, and obviously they have to be secure. Now, open source obviously has a benefit because we are plugging into the universal intelligence. So there is a high, it is always deemed that open source software has gone through millions and billions of people who have ensured that the code is secure enough. It meets the basic guidelines of security, and that is the first initial step, that works in favor of, say, open source. Every bank would want to be future ready, every bank would want to future proof itself. So this is one area which you can definitely experiment with, and if at all you find the entire ecosystem working in your favor, then you can slowly, gradually move it to your mainstream systems. So this, I feel, would be the approach which every bank is going to take in terms of adopting the new upcoming open source technologies.
Great. I think that's really nice, Amal, from your point of view. Thank you, this esteemed panelists. Thank you. It was really a great pleasure for all of you to be here. Thank you.
We as telco work with large number of equipment providers. We work with large number of application providers. And what we saw, that taking a path of OpenStack, open source, led to a common denominator where we could work with large number of network equipment providers to create a solution which can work on one platform. So now today, for example, I have got more than 70 locations spread across the length and breadth of the country. And earlier, if I was not with a common denominator, each solution would require a separate set of racks, and it would have been quite inefficient. Now, coming to a common denominator helps me create a very efficient solution, help me distribute it, take it near to the customer, give it experience which is quite significantly improved. And it comes at a cost which is quite less because we are working on a shared platform, a shared universal cloud, a common denominator. And this is where open source helps us in one way, because it is one set of standards where you can bring different partners to.
It has thus been established that open source creates an empowering environment for individuals and enterprises to innovate, offering industry leaders a fresh blueprint for success.